Oliver Kisaka is joining us this morning as we're talking about transformational leadership, and we look at this headline, what will be a transformative leader? Anyway, can we say that our MPs are transformative leaders, right? Mike?
Well, we talked earlier about Atwali's 5 million shilling watch.
Yes.
And his goal obviously is transforming his lifestyle. And I think we have comparable examples here. Mm-hmm. When you're so self-obsessed with material well-being and sense of entitlement,
yes,
that is not a few more knots, transformative leadership.
Yes.
When you don't read bills because you're not interested in all that boring stuff, and you're more focused on how to get re-elected and to have everyone hold their elbow when they shake your hand. That's not transformative leadership. It's not that there are no good MPs or governors or others. Our present transformative leadership model is Makweni, isn't it?
Yes.
Where people come there to see how he's transforming his county, Kibudha Kibwana.
Yes.
So we have some role models, but they're not very emulated.
All right. Okay, in light of this, if you may just have this on the split screen as well, and Dr. Kisaka, you can comment on this. MPs want more cars, allowances and luxuries.
He's shaking his head.
Yes.
Yeah, what do you make of it?
Yes. Debarl, there's a sense in which human beings never learn, or some never learn. The things that we don't have only look attractive, special, needed when we don't have them. Once you have them, they don't mean anything. They don't add to your life in a way that is different from others. These are people whose sense of entitlement was satisfied long time ago. All these extras are taking away from the poor people of this country.
Yes.
They are setting up this country for the same conditions that prevailed before the French Revolution. People are in difficulty, under pressure, electricity prices are going up. There's a promise that petrol will go up, raising up everything. And the only thing our MPs can do is to cushion themselves by getting more money instead of making better legislation so that everybody benefits. There is a gross misunderstanding of what leadership is, and we just pray and hope that they can get internally enlightened.
Internally enlightened. So they're not really enlightened as far as you're concerned.
And who votes for them is the other question.
Who votes? You do.
We do. We do.
Oliver does.
Yeah.
Yes.
All of us, we do.
Yes.
So we elect who we are, essentially. Don't we?
Yeah, who we aspire to be.
We aspire to be. Fantastic. This
or
is
at least get some crumbs from the table.
Yes.
This is what we have on the front page of the Star this morning. MPs want more cars, allowances and luxuries. You can follow that story inside the Star. Let's continue to see what we have on the front page of the Taifa Leo. Ufisadi, Raila Ajitosa Vitani. That is what we have as a splash today on the front page of Taifa Leo. You can follow this story also inside page 2 of Taifa Leo. We cross over now to Tanzania. I have mwananchi for you, kauli ya IGP Ciro kupigwa, mwandishi yazua mjadala. That is what we have on the front page of Mwananchi in Tanzania. We'll see if you can cross over to Uganda. We'll see what the Daily Monitor has for us there. Bobby Wine, 33 others charged, remanded. 5 members of parliament charged with treason and lawful possession of ammunition and firearms. That is a story that you want to follow inside the Daily Monitor. Also, President blames Bobby Wine Wadri for violence. That is another story that you have on the front page of the Daily Monitor. Let's see what we have on the front page of the New Times. Government suspends 57 schools in fresh crackdown. This is happening in Rwanda. You can follow that story as well inside the New Times in Rwanda. And our MC reminds journalists to remain impartial while covering polls. That story on page 4 of the New Times in Rwanda. Also, poor feasibility studies blamed for shoddy Imihigo projects is a story that you want to follow inside the New Times if you're waking up in Rwanda. And we do have as well some magazine for you. Before I go there, we can get to understand the region as well. This is what has been headlining the front page of East African this week. Kenyan sugar triggers regional trade war. Mistrust stands bitter. Tanzania says imports from Uganda are actually from Kenya, where scandal is raging over contamination. Allies turned adversaries, and you can see here President Yoweri Museveni, Kampala says DAS action is in violation of EAC Common Market Protocol. Also, President John Magufuli, Tanzania has imposed 25% import duty on the commodity. This is what has been headlining the front page of East African this week. Also struck as Kagame sends the entire health unit packing. President Paul Kagame has sacked the entire staff of a vital unit in the Ministry of Health, accused of gross mismanagement of public resources. This story continues on page 6 of the East African this week. Allow me to show you also what we do have as magazines here before we go to the editorial cartoons. This is what is on the front page of the Nairobi Law Monthly this month. If you've not gotten your copy, then States Capture the Royal Republic is all about the sugar, of course, scandal that has been ongoing. And this is what has been captured up here also in the Nairobi Law Monthly. And also the Nairobi Business Monthly is covering this as well for you. Asmara Accord spells doom for Kenya. Find out how that will pan out. Ethiopia forging an economic partnership with Eritrea. Was Kenya only remaining partner in the LAPSET project? Where does this leave Nairobi's debt-laden government? You can read all about this inside the Nairobi Law Monthly this month. We can see also the editorial cartoons for us. This is what we do have in the editorial cartoons. Well, it's drawing a blank on me. I'll try and see if I can lift it again for you. Where they're gone. This is the editorial cartoons that we do have today. Let me try and see if I can lift it again for you. There we go. This is in the Daily Nation. There is hope, right, for NYS. Of course, you know about the restructuring of the NYS and what is happening right now. So there is hope with the president making the pronouncements that we should have a CEO, and also the supply chains should be streamlined in the NYS, because that's where we know the clammy hands or the clammy fingers of corruption have been actually, stealing from the public coffers. That is what we do have inside the Daily Nation today editorial page, the editorial cartoon. Also, we do have the Standard for you, and this is what Gado has drawn for us today. Mola probe. This is a time bomb, right, waiting to just explode there. Of course, without particular probe and the involvement of the Russia in their general election. Let's see what we do have also inside the People Daily. And this is what Steno has drawn for us today. Allowances and the MPs, right? I have good news for you. Parliament's catering department is now offering me 5-star treatment. And this is what was headlined on the front page of the Star this morning. So those are your dailies today. Make sure you grab a copy of the Daily Nation, the Business Daily, Taifa Leo, or Daily Monitor if you're in Uganda, the Citizen, or whichever paper that really floats upon. Residents of Baragoi South go to the poll this morning to elect MP. NMT journalists assaulted as they cover building construction on ocean land. And Mali President Ibrahim Boubacar with re-election with 67% of votes. Mombasa Best Nation Media Group journalists who were yesterday beaten and detained at a construction site in the Northern Coast have, all by last evening, recorded a statement with the police hours after the mid-morning ordeal. The two, NTV cameraman Karim Rajan and Daily Nation photojournalist Laban Waloga, were beaten and handcuffed by security personnel when they went to seek clarification on why a private developer was constructing a hotel, blocking the beach and reclaiming sea land or ocean land, and whether he had the relevant permits to do so. The construction is ongoing at what was Dolphin Hotel. NTV's Leila Mohammed starts off.
NMG journalists walking out of Bamburi police station after recording statements after having been attacked and detained after filming a hotel construction site that is reclaiming land in the ocean in Shanzu. The questionable construction has locals in fear and is said to belong to the boss of bosses.
Miaka 38 sijawahi kuwa harassed na watu vile walivoni harass leo. Wamenipiga, wakawa karibu wanataka kuvunja kamera yangu. Nikapigana na wao mpaka kwa ofisi yao kule. Mwenzangu naye akapigwa vibaya sana, akawekwa mpaka pingu.
Prior to their detention, the two were filmed being taken into custody by a group of men. While Karim is seen trying to secure his equipment, Laban is pushed, and at one point the situation turns physical, with the journalist seemingly getting punched by the men. The group was seeking answers on why the construction of a hotel had led to the closing off of part of the beach in Shanzu area that many residents fear not only blocked the path of beach users but hurt the environment.
Kusema kweli kulikuwa na bulldozer inachimba kwa beach, alafu nyuma yake ni hoteli inajengwa. So sisi tukaendelea kufilm na wakatulazimisha lazima tuachie hapo tufungue material waone nini ambayo tulikuwa tunafanya.
While her colleagues were roughed up and detained, Daily Nation reporter Winnie Ouma could only help her team by recording their ordeal.
Kuna polisi ambaye nilimtambua, akaniona, akaambia wenzake, yule msichana yu record kamshike. Kuona hivyo na uoga wa binadamu yoyote, nikatoroka. Sijui vile nilijipata chooni, lakini nilika chooni kwa zaidi ya kama 20 minutes.
Haki Africa, that had previously sent out a statement condemning the detentions, reiterated its position that there are no private beaches in the country.
People are dying out there, there is insecurity all over, and then you have security men guarding construction work.
The construction of the former Dolphin Hotel has been going on for the last 2 years, with reclamation of the sea beginning 2 months ago. While residents cannot walk across the beach without walking in water, many are fearful that the natural breeding environment for turtles could be in danger. NTV is informed that KWS officers are too intimidated to get involved, despite the fact that it is a turtle breeding ground. There are also questions about how such a major construction project and reclamation of land in the ocean could happen, with NEMA completely oblivious. The Nation Media Group is taking legal action. Leila Mohammed, NTV.
Kipyegon Bet is the latest Kenyan athlete to be suspended for a doping-related offense. The Athletics Integrity Unit has announced the 20-year-old Bet, who won the 800 meters bronze medal at last year's World Championships in London, refused or failed to submit to sample collection on August the 15th, which was yesterday. According to the AIU, which handles integrity and doping issues for the International Association of Athletics Federation. Other Kenyan athletes suspended for doping-related offenses within the past month are marathon runners Samuel Kalalei and Lucy Kabu, former Olympic and 3-time world 1,500 meters champion Asbel Kiprop is also under provisional suspension after his samples were found to contain the blood booster EPO. He has strongly denied the charges. Kiprop's case has been referred to the disciplinary tribunal alongside that of Kenyan-born Bahrain Ruth Jabet, the Olympic 3,000 meters steeplechase champion. All the cases have increased suspicions about the East African nation renowned for its world-class middle and long-distance runners. Other Kenyan athletes involved in doping cases in recent years include 3-time Boston Marathon winner Rita Jepto and her training partner Jemima Sumgong, the 2016 Olympic marathon champion. And former Youth Affairs Principal Secretary Lilian Omolo and 53 others facing charges over the suspect expenditure of 468 million shillings scandal at NYS will be tried in January in the Anti-Corruption Court. Prosecutors from the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions availed to the defense lawyers all the witness statements, exhibits and evidence material it intends to use in the trials. The Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission says it will oppose an application by the National Land Commission seeking to stop further investigations into the 1.5 billion shillings paid as compensation for 2 public schools in Ruaraka, Nairobi County. EACC says an order sought by NLC to hold any institution of civil or criminal proceedings of the controversial land is direct interference with its mandate as provided for under the Constitution. NLC, through lawyer Tom Ojenda, filed an urgent application this month seeking to stop any criminal proceedings against the payment made in respect of a land now occupied by 2 schools. EACC, in a replying affidavit to the application, stated that it intends to institute criminal or civil proceedings against NLC and other beneficiaries for purpose of recovery of 1.5 billion shillings paid for the 13.5 acres. The hearing of the case has been transferred to the Land and Environmental Division of the High Court. ODM leader Raila Odinga and others are advocating for a different turn in war against corruption in the country, saying that it has even made its way to Parliament, and urged the anti-graft agencies to put their focus on those that are offering the funds being used to carry out their transactions. The opposition leader was speaking at the burial of Christine Wausu Kalinzoya, an aunt of former Machakos Senator Johnson Muthama in Tala, Machakos County, where the Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka also attended and asked President Uhuru Kenyatta not to spare anyone in the fight against corruption in order to bring change, I should say, in Kenya. NASA leader Raila Odinga also met with a delegation from India to discuss the promotion of biodegradable products that will help in conserving Kenya's environment. Some of the products are biodegradable bags made of vegetables, cassava, maize, and other products that were said to be friendly to the environment.
Asante. Asante mama. Wananchi wa Kenya wamechoka na ufisadi. Kama tunaweza to slay this dragon of corruption, President Uhuru Kenyatta himself will have established a proper and appropriate legacy.
Wabunge wanapewa rushwa. Sasa utajiuliza, ni nani anahatia hapo? Manake wabunge wanapewa hongo ndani kule kwenye choo, vio ndani ya bunge. Utajiuliza, hiyo pesa iliingiaje kwa bunge? Nani amelipia pesa hajaenda peke yake? Kuna mtu anataka hiyo pesa.
And residents of Baringo South will today go to the polls to elect their Member of Parliament following the death of Grace Kipchoim in April this year. The contest has been intense. Campaigns from the Jubilee and Maendeleo Chap candidates.
See any issues arising from the actual conduct of the polls.
We expect that all will go well. However, I've seen a bit of intimidation. I've had some of my own agents being intimidated, and it's unfortunate that that is happening.
As a commission, we didn't see the need of incurring that extra expenditure of trying to do live transmission, because that requires us to get in touch with other organizations.
Let's buckle now to some business where Kenya risks increasing the capacity of its power output in a bid to push the industrialization agenda without having commensurate growth in the demand for electricity. This is one of the issues that came to the fore at the great energy debate that was hosted at the Strathmore Business School.
About 11,000 employees. If I look at the kind of work that I need to do in putting up infrastructure to be able to provide 100% access to power, there's so much that the internal capacity that I have, I can't be able to meet it. So I'll require my employees together with other contractors to be able to do this work.
We are trying to train people within at the University of Nairobi Institute of Nuclear Science and Technology. And also we developed MOUs for training with other countries like Korea. We are trying to do one with Texas A&M. And we are now training people with China.
Why can't we offer a dedicated line and set up an industrial zone at the river where the smelters, the cement guys can get slightly lower cost power, but then the demand will shoot because more people will come in to do the steel. It's not rocket science. I mean, the idea is already there, but we are big on talking and small on doing.
Let's come up with models that are workable, even if it means coming up with one pilot special economic zone. Pilot it, let it work, and let's multiply. It's needless to have 20 or 40 special economic zones that are not functional.
Now, it is the reporting season for banks, and the big guns in the industry this time seems to have colluded to release their half-year results on the same day. KCB has announced a net profit of 12.1 billion shillings on the back of 17.5% growth in earnings compared to a similar period last year. Now, Equity Bank saw its net earnings rise to 11 billion shillings, up also by 17.5%, but ceding the position of the most profitable bank that it held after the first quarter results to its rival KCB. Cooperative banks, I should say, after tax profit for the 6-month period have gone up by 7.8% to 7.1 billion shillings. Given the interest rate cap, the banks have switched strategy, investing in government paper instead, to the detriment of credit to the private sector. Now, the infantry battalion of China's 4th Peacekeeping Force to South Sudan resolved a conflict breaking out among refugees in South Sudan's capital, Juba. At about 9:30 on Tuesday, the Chinese Peacekeeping Force received a report saying that that lead by example. Their style tends to use rapport, inspiration, or empathy to engage followers. They're known to possess courage, confidence, and the willingness to make sacrifices for the greater good. They possess a single-minded need to streamline or change things that no longer work. The transformational leader motivates workers and understands how to form them into integral units that work well with others. And this is what we're talking about this morning. Transformational leaders on Leadership Forum. At the top of the hour, I introduced our guest, Mike Eldon, who is our management consultant, also the chair of KCA University and the CEO of and the chair of the depot. Also, we do have with us Oliver Kisaka and also Dr. Wale Akinyemi joining us today. We had from Mike Eldon. I just want to get a brief maybe from Dr. Oliver Kisaka. And I know you've mentioned something a bit about leadership and MPs in light of what also on the front page of a Star. But from our assessment, who is a transformative leader?
Debarl, a transformative leader is one whose leadership facilitates the people that they lead to grow from one level of life, you could say, to a better level of life in all aspects of human existence.
Yes.
You could talk about a person who facilitates the capacity of individuals to solve their own problems, to be able to grasp a clear vision of where we are going, to empower them to participate in the processes of decision making, to allow them to exercise their own creativity, and to be one who actually works with his people almost on a collegiate status. So by the end of time, it's not only the leader who has capacity, the leader has transferred the capacity to those that they are leading. Permit me, because I come from the faith sector, to use the example of Jesus Christ, who calls in 12 individuals. Many of them would have been described as nondescript, but by the time he is leaving and handing over leadership to them, they have capacity to take on the work to which they have been called. And so a transformative leader is one who transfers that capacity so that the individuals that they are leading are active participants in the process, capable of exercising their gifts, bringing their creativity, and growing in the various dimensions of life.
All right. Okay, thank you. Dr. Wale Akinyemi, good morning.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you. I think it's, I'll give an example. When I was a little kid growing up in Lagos, the politicians promised us different things, but at the core of what they promised, they said they would give us water, electricity, roads, hospitals, and schools. That was 1979 presidential elections. Now, 2015, we had another election. And what were they promising? Exactly the same things. Water, electricity, roads, hospitals, and schools.
Which are our rights,
so,
basically.
If the problem has not changed, transformation has not happened. And therefore, those who are at the helm charged with solving the problem were, at best, not transformational, but sincerely, not leaders. Yeah.
Not leaders, right. And of course, that will form the basis of our discussion today. Rules of engagement, you know. My bell is here. I can see, Mike, you're getting startled a bit. Then I have my red card, my yellow card, and my red card. Just for the sake of keeping time, you'll walk over to the lectern and talk to Kenyans for at least 6 minutes and tell us what you think about transformational leadership. There are the myriads kind of leadership styles that we've talked this morning. Briefly, we had Mike Eldon talking about a situational leadership, also transactional leadership, authentic leadership, ethical leadership. I mean, we have various styles of leadership today, but we are training our focus today on transformational leader, and you can chime in, hit us on Twitter. AM Live NTV is a Twitter handle, AM Live NTV our profile name on Facebook, and 20505 20686 we changed our SMS portal, is what you can use this morning as well. And remember to use the hashtag AMLiveNTV. So to our panelists, and now all of you have been here, so you know the rules of engagement, but for the sake of viewers as well, this is just to make sure that we're keeping time. My yellow card will be raised midway through your presentation to just warn you that you've got 3 minutes remaining out of the 6. The red card will be also used to just tell you that yes, you're almost done, so you should be winding up, and if you go beyond 6, I will ring the bell, right? So we'll begin with Mike, because I can see Mike was the first one to come, and Mike, remember also you're tethered to the mic, so you can actually just remove your mic, then walk over to the lectern and start talking to us about transformational leadership. And Mike Eldon is the chair of Kenya KCA University, and also he is the CEO of the depot. He is a management consultant, and will talk to us about transformational leadership. What is his slice as far as his assessment of transformational leader is, and of course he'll tell us some of the transformative leaders that we do have in the country, in the world. And of course we also want you to remember to use the platforms that we've used or we've shared with you this morning on our social media. Mike, 6 minutes.
Thank you, Debarl, and good morning. Some years ago, working with the World Bank as a consultant, I was introduced to another fancy term for transformational leadership, adaptive leadership. And I can see Oliver nodding here, Wale half nodding, obviously fellow gurus. And this was a term coined by Ronald Heifetz, a Harvard guru. And ever since then, I've got to learn more and more about it and talked with organizations, with CEOs, with others about it. And it appeals to me a lot for many different ways. Yesterday, my column in Business Daily was about the disruptive consequences of reorganizations, of restructuring. And one of the big challenges with that, perhaps the big challenge, is that whenever you restructure, there are winners and losers. At least perceptions of winning and losing, of potentially winning and losing. And obviously when you're restructuring, there's some element of transformation and in support, hopefully, of some better future. So the challenge to a transformative leader is how you particularly help those who perceive themselves as losers, however justified or otherwise, to deal with it, to overcome it, and perhaps in a best case scenario, to make short-term sacrifices in support of a long-term better future, including for themselves. And as a director and as a consultant, I'm involved in several situations where transformative leaders have done a great job helping their people, particularly the losers, as Donald Trump would call them, to overcome their grief and to heal and to keep going, ideally with a promise of better things to come, including rewards for having heroically dealt with loss. Whenever you're transforming, you're disrupting. And whether you're bringing in Uber or you're launching Safaricom or you're recovering from Rwanda's genocide, there'll be losers. It's easier to deal with the winners, of course. The real challenge of a transformative leader is how to deal with those who feel they're not doing so well as they were doing before. They've been disrupted. They've been sidelined. They've been demoted. Their control, their influence has been reduced. So as we think of who have been the transformative leaders, we've got some obvious examples. We'll take Mandela. Here are the whites who are going to be losers, having been the winners. How do you deal with them? Okay, you put on your rugby Springboks shirt and you do all those good things. That's very clever stuff. It requires a lot of humility, a lot of emotional intelligence. And I'm sure a lot of the time, for him, separating how you feel from how you behave. Isn't that the essence of emotional intelligence? of maneuvering through life as a leader, bringing people together in support of a common vision, a transformational vision, something that goes beyond linear extrapolation, a gentle decline of apartheid maybe, or a slow introduction of mobile phones and eventual mobile money, of having one or two apps for a few taxi drivers. No, that's not transformational. Transformational is having that huge vision of a very different tomorrow and bringing people along with it. And Oliver talked very nicely about how transformational leaders need to operate by bringing in others, growing them, delegating to them, empowering them, coaching them. And that's what directors are meant to do. It's what consultants are meant to do, like ourselves. And so to be a transformational leader is not to be the big man looking down the steep organizational pyramid saying, I know you don't, do this, do that, implement my instructions. That is not transformational leadership, where you are the know-it-all. Again, the antithesis of what Oliver was saying. Heifetz talked about other very interesting aspects of transformational leadership. And one of them, and it's not unique to him, of course, is what he calls getting up on the balcony. And when you rise above what's going on day to day, above the operational, above the urgent, it is then that you get the bigger picture. The whole organization as it is today, looking far forward, looking also back at where we've come from, the founder's vision and values. Maybe you were the founder, maybe you weren't. And to put all of this into a perspective, a journey with some glorious future, not necessarily destination, but next transformative, ambitious stage. But perhaps the most important aspect of getting up on the balcony is so you can reflect inward into yourself as a self-leader of your own transformation and learning and growth and dealing with situations as you should. Getting up on the balcony is obviously very important to observe in a detached and objective way. A further aspect of adaptive leadership is to be able to differentiate between the technical and the non-technical aspects of leadership. Many people who become CEOs, chairmen of boards, etc., have come up through a particular function. It could be finance, it could be legal, it could be marketing. But then the challenge arises, particularly if you have a technical background, an architect, an engineer, an accountant, to have developed, and before it's too late, the muscles of interpersonal skills, of all the things we have been talking about. And unless you understand that you have to have an adequacy of the technical skills, but also, because the technical stuff you're now doing through other people, you don't want them to con you, but you don't want to get over-involved in the operational technicalities. The big challenge of leadership is to be there with bringing the people together, as we've been saying, and to understand the difference between the two and to move forward with them. I'll conclude with an amusing one from Jaindi Kisero today in his article about ARM and Poor Paunrana. And he talked about Noah in his concluding paragraph of the Old Testament, who was the greatest turnaround artist. He managed to float a company when the whole world was under liquidation. And he concludes by saying, over to you, Linus Gitai, the new chairman of ARM. I think from what I know, Jaindi is unduly critical of Paunrana, who I would also describe as a transformational leader, but that's for another day.
In there with his sentiments about transformational leadership as well. And of course, Also a huge component of it is emotional intelligence that he's also alluded to. When you are a transformative leader, it's not really just about also disruptors, because that is all about transformation, but there are a lot of confluence of issues around it as well. We want to invite Dr. Oliver Kisaka to just also head over to the lectern to give us his sentiments about transformative leadership. And he's a man of many caps. I don't know how I should introduce him this morning. He will tell us how also we should introduce him, because I know he has a new role, and he is an ethical leadership coach as well. Oliver will be talking to us about transformative leadership. Just to remind you, can head over to a Twitter handle. AM Live NTV is a Twitter handle. AM Live NTV is a profile name on Facebook. Right, he's donning his coat. He wants to look dapper, of course, and carrying his notes also to the lectern right now. All of you have 6 minutes, beginning now.
Okay. Thank you very much, Debarl, and I want to bring greetings to Kenyans all over our country and others that are watching in East Africa this morning, hoping that you are all fine. I just want to make some reflections. I want to make some reflection on Africanness before colonialism. I want to pitch my understanding from the very natural way in which African communities were organized. African communities were largely criticized for their backwardness, or the word used was actually primitivity, in the context of the fact that they did not have things like modern toilets and related stuff. But if you observe the way African communities lived, there was a very clear way in which people became leaders, whether they were monarchic or they were acephalous, led by groups of leaders, elders. It was very clear what happened when somebody was born, how the person grew, how they translated from one stage to another. There were very clear rights of how that happened. And then what roles all the people played. And as you grew up through these various stages, you learned to become a leader at your various corner. So you could talk of leaders of families, leaders of clans, leaders of tribes, and then you talked about leaders of the entire community. What we found to be a great challenge is that the entrance of colonialism disrupted Africanness and accelerated Africanness through a very harsh system of discrimination. The average Kenyan leader, for example, during the colonial period, had only the colonial farmer and the colonial civil servant as a role model. And so when we are fighting for freedom, we are fighting to actually take their place. Who was a success story? It was the farmer that you knew, who owned all the land and kept all the other people as slaves. You become a leader, you are a member of parliament, you give yourself privilege. Do not care how many people live in Kibera, how many people live in Madare, because your model of leadership was, once it's okay with me, it doesn't matter what happens to other people. This morning I want to reflect on the thoughts of a scholar called Prachi Juneja. I couldn't tell where he comes from, which country, but he wrote an article that was interesting to the management study guide community, in which he highlighted the following: the transformative leadership exhibits 4 factors. 1, inspirational motivation. 2, intellectual stimulation. 3, idealized influence. And 4, individualized consideration. Inspirational motivation is the approach to those that you are leading that facilitates your recognition of their potential and their encouragement, their nurture. you keep nurturing them. Everyone has weaknesses. Everyone can fail. In any case, all exceptional leaders failed many times to become exceptional leaders. So when we attack and destroy people at the level at which they have been given a small assignment and they have failed, we fail to nurture what should be going on. Intellectual stimulation has to do with whether the people that are being led are actually engaged in their minds, thinking through solutions, being part of what's happening, and contributing to the decision-making processes of which they are involved. Now, idealized influence has to do with vision, where you keep painting a picture, a discomfort with status quo, and a picture of what could be. So there was a day when Kenyan roads were very narrow. At the beginning of Vision 2030, there was consideration that Kenya could have better highways, a better airport, a better this. Now, that paints that picture of what could be and invites the people to dream together. And so this morning, what I find lacking in our country, Debarl, is that our leaders, and I want to say I'm one of them, have actually failed to demonstrate to the people that they are human, that they can only survive on so much, and that they have capacity for social engineering that actually creates room for everybody. If I don't take care of the people who live in the slums, I must put a very huge fence around my home with electric fence, with a number of dogs, with a number of security farms. I'm spending the money taking care of my little unit instead of facilitating them so that they don't need to attack me. It's a funny way of thinking. On the papers today, our MPs are proposing those luxuries after a benchmarking visit to the UK, we are told. Did they really go to the UK? Did they see how UK MPs live? Those people, when they pass on the streets, nobody hardly knows they are passing. They live in normal housing. So this benchmarking, I want to suggest, is not from the UK. People who are leaders that are secure get to the point where they recognize that they hold office in trust for the people and that they are actually going to lead the people to come up as they have come up. If today I was not an MP, I should be able to go back to my corner and just live a successful life. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Oliver Kisaka there. Right, and we look at a leader, are they inspiring, right? Also, do they motivate you, of course, intellectually? Do they stimulate you? Do they have that idealized influence? And of course, these are raft of issues that we shall be discussing on the other side of the break. We want to take a short break right now. And what Dr. Oliver Kisaka was alluding to is that what benchmarking this MP is talking about. This is what is on the front page of the Star this morning about the MPs who want more luxuries, more allowances, more cars. More is the lingo, right? That is what we have on the front page of the Star right now. We want to take a short break. When we come back, we shall hear from Dr. Wale Akinyemi, who is the CEO of the Power Talk. And of course, he shall also give us his slice of what he thinks transformative leadership is all about. Don't go away. Welcome back. You're watching the Leadership Forum here on AM Live. And of course, we continue past with the conversation. We're talking about transformational leadership. And up on the podium right now is Dr. Wale Akinyemi, the CEO of Power Talks, also to give us his slice of what he thinks transformational leadership was all about. We have 6 minutes, sir, beginning now.
Good morning, Kenya. Like I said earlier on when I was first asked, it's all about change. If there's no before and after story, then we're just playing games. You know, how do you explain, and this is the story, you know, in a lot of Africa, is that people, we should not confuse leadership with office holders, because the fact that you occupy an office does not make you a leader. If you're not a leader before you get into the office, no office has the capacity to make a leader out of you. So it first starts with leadership. And when we look at the concept of leadership across board, yesterday Aretha Franklin died, and whenever people like that die, I ask myself some tough questions that, number one, what will be said about me? But more importantly, you look at the impact of its transgenerational impact, you know, and that is transformational, transgenerational impact, that over, you know, there's a consistency. But what do such people have in common? Let's look at another transgenerational person that made transgenerational impact, Muhammad Ali. You know, one of his friends said when he died, his friend was called Daniel Wilson, and he said when they were going to school in the cold winter, Cassius Clay, as he was then known, was running alongside the bus. And the students were laughing at him, and he was laughing back because he knew something they didn't know. You know, he was developing something. He was stretching himself for where he was going. And somebody, you know, he said later on, he said the perfect present would be to be in a warm bus, but the perfect future would be to be the heavyweight champion of the world. Quincy Jones said that Michael Jackson, in learning how to dance, will get gazelles and watch how the gazelles would move, and then, you know, use that to practice his dance moves. So you find out that a lot of these people that make transgenerational impact, they stretched themselves even to bizarre limits. All right? So in essence, when they got on the stage, they gave us the best version of themselves. And not only did they give us the best version of themselves, they were not competing with people on the outside. They were competing with that best version of themselves. So every time they were trying to beat what they had already accomplished. Now that is leadership. The question we want to ask is, some of these headlines we read and some of the things we read across the continent, are these people giving us the best version of themselves? I think that's a fundamental question I want to ask. Because if they are not, then they are office holders and not leaders. What have they done to stretch themselves to serve? If we cannot identify the sacrifice before the service, then they are not leaders. They are office holders. Because true leadership is the product of sacrifice on a personal level. It could be sacrifice to develop yourself, sacrifice to let go of things that you desire for the cause of where you are going. It could be the sacrifice of doing things that are not convenient because of the office you represent. So if there is no personal sacrifice, then we have office holders and not leaders. Then let's go to transformation. Like I said, it is a movement when we, and I've said this over and over even on this platform, that The English language helps us to understand what transformation is. When you hear transatlantic, it means across the Atlantic. When you hear trans-Sahara, it means across the Sahara. The word trans connotes across. So the word transform means across forms, from one form to another. And the way to understand that, don't go far. Look at a butterfly. One form is the egg, one form is the larva, one form is the pupa, and the other form is the butterfly. So the transformation is the movement from egg to butterfly. Okay? Now, unfortunately, what we have called transformation in a lot of Africa is not a movement from one form to the other, but excessive activity within one form. So we may be 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, we are still eggs. And that is the problem. And a bigger problem is that the people we are leading, you know, if you don't know what is possible, you will settle for what is available. Unfortunately, a lot of the people that are being led don't know what is possible. So when somebody comes and promises them what is their entitlement, they think that person is doing them a favor. Nobody is doing you a favor by providing what is an entitlement. So when we look at something I developed some time ago because I was frustrated with this situation across Africa. And it's a leadership index where I look at the growth of office holders, the personal economic well-being of office holders vis-a-vis the personal economic well-being of those that they lead. Now, if the personal economic well-being of the office holder is at 20, 30, sometimes 100, 200%, and the personal economic well-being generally of the people they are leading is at 5%, 10%, then we have a problem. That means we are in a society dominated by office holders who have no clue what transformation is, and not a society with leaders. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Wale Akinyemi, and he's, of course, spoken to us about transformational leadership and what he thinks about it. He says, don't confuse leaders with office holders, or he's asking, are these people giving us the best version of themselves? Because that is what is expected from a transformative leader. There is sacrifice before the service, right? True leadership is a product of sacrifice on a personal level. And do you know what is possible? Or are you settling on what is available? Do you know what is possible? Or are you just settling for what is available? We want now to just sit down and talk about all these silent points that have been raised by our panelists this morning. And remember also, you can chime in as well. You can cross over or head over to a Twitter handle, which is AM Live NTV. AM Live NTV, our profile name on Facebook, and 20686, our SMS portal. I shall be reading some of your reactions on Twitter much later in the course of the program. Also, remember, our numbers will be up momentarily. You can call in, ask questions, or share your contribution as well. Remember to use the hashtag AMLiveNTV. Right, let's just now buckle down to business and discuss. Of course, we were doing business, but now we discuss about the silent points that you've raised here, talking about transformational leadership and how we can try and extrapolate what you've given us this morning and just cast it to a current scenario that we have in the country when it comes to leadership as well. Not only from, of course, the politicians, where people, they normally debate about if we should call them leaders or they're just maybe office holders or just politicians, and different facets of course, of various sectors that we have in this country when it comes to true leadership. We can begin with you, Mike Eldon, because you raised the issue of what really I picked out and I think was very also pivotal when it comes to transformative leadership, the emotional intelligence component of it. Maybe you can try and elucidate more for our viewers to understand how pivotal is this when it comes to transformative leaders?
I'm always surprised when I'm with groups of people, I'm running a workshop or coaching, whatever it is, how few people have still got to grips with this thing called emotional intelligence. I thought that everyone these days knew about it, but it turns out not to be the case. And I remember there was one workshop I was running quite some years ago, and I doubt it would be very different today, where he said, I know about emotions and I know about intelligence, but what has one got to do with the other? And yet it's a very straightforward thing, and it's about interacting with other people in ways that bring them together around a common goal. Not bad a definition of leadership. And yet, so therefore, how can you be a leader unless you know how to do that? And you have the antithesis of that in divisive leadership, but where you are being very emotionally intelligent with your base, no names. And you're reinforcing and stirring up your base with great emotional intelligence, whilst alienating those who are not your base, the opposition. And yet the transformative leader of a nation should be bringing everyone together. It's just like having, say, a technical CEO who's leaving aside the HR people and all the softies dealing with the interpersonal stuff. Let's get on with the task. Let's get on with the job. And again, in so much of what I do, I have actually concluded that my role in life is to be a mediator. And another way I describe that is by helping bring people together, negotiating to win-win. Now, that's not in the nature of a lawyer in court. It's not in the nature of a politician confronted with an election.
Yes.
But as a transformational leader, your role is to bring people to win-win. And I think ultimately that is what emotional intelligence is about, so that you use, I prefer the word feelings actually. You use your positive feelings. I talked earlier about separating sometimes your feelings from your behavior, because you shouldn't be too transparent when you're angry with Wale to show it, but on the contrary, to build that relationship that results in both of you over time, with give and take, doing better.
And we had also, Oliver Kisaka, you really talk about, of course, the Africanness before colonialism. And
a win-lose one.
You're raising the aspect of backwardness and civilization. And when the colonialists, they came, so to speak, they brought civilization. But also, I can remember, if I hack back into my history in Form 2, my teacher used to take special umbrage, my history teacher, with that how come they are telling us they used to bring civilization? We were already civilized in our own way. So in what metrics were they defining their own civilization? And what is this backwardness that we're talking about? Because you came here, you found me using my stone as a knife. That is civilization according to me, right? So you using your still a blade, of course, to cut meat or maybe slice your bread. It doesn't mean that you're more civilized than I am.
Yes, Debarl, I think what we are talking about here is the human capacity to discriminate against things that take me forward and things that take me backwards. And so to discover a better way of how to cut is development. It ought not to mean that the way you are using now is primitive. And I think the labeling that happened completely then excluded the Africans and the African way of life, instead of connecting between the African ways of life and other ways of life which had their own things to offer. In my studies, I found, for example, that for a period of about 70 years, the colonial government struggled to have a few people excel as others served them. What that created is animosity, a feeling of inferiority. You could actually say it was quite traumatic. It confused the people so that their own lifestyle is diminished and yet they are not quite the new lifestyle that was expected. Today, we sometimes as an African people still suffer that consequence. Inside we are African, out here we are trying to be Western. I think we ought to say that transformative leadership ought to be aiming to bring everybody up in such a way that everybody can function. As I came to sit down, Mike just reminded me that Boris, the foreign minister of
Boris Johnson.
Johnston, yes.
Boris Johnson.
Rides a bike to work. Now, to be able to ride a bike to work has a number of things. First, your security is not based on cars. Your success is not based on huge things. It is based on the person you are and the services you are able to offer. Secondly, it is based on the fact that the leadership has organized the community in such a way that there's sufficient security. Anybody can ride without being attacked. Third, the roads have been prepared so that you can ride your bike without somebody. So the leaders are meant to be organizing society in such a way that everybody has access and can come up and can operate without hindrance. Instead of doing that, you hear explanations like, the reason I needed to buy a big car was because my county has potholes. The person who ought to be fixing the potholes uses the money he ought to be using to fix the potholes to buy a huge car, not to fill the potholes. It's a warped thinking. It's a lack of understanding. It's a manifestation of the extreme traumatic reality that we face. I think we have reached that point where we ought to critically self-examine and say that what we are looking for is not just the success of a few individuals, but the success of everybody. And that may very well mean that instead of increasing allowances and salaries, we actually should have them, just so that the funds are available to do what needs to bring other people up and create an opportunity for them. Capitalism, which is the system that is credited with the success of most of the successful countries, only worked because it was undergirded by strong values. Strong values. You are not a thief. You do not lack integrity. You are not a person who doesn't care about other people. You are not a person who is unable to think in the shoes of somebody else as you promote yourself. So that then democracy was a system that would then bring those ideas on board and cause you to be regulated. Then you cannot live too much beyond them. So in the absence of values, what happens is that a fellow like this one who owns the Taj Mahal can dare call on God to punish those who want to break down his building, instead of realizing that he has blocked all Kenyans from using a road that would have given access to everybody. And he thinks that that is success, you see. So the warped nature of our value system destroys what then should be the leadership that we require. And I think we need to get to the point where everybody turns around and feels you hold office in trust on behalf of other Kenyans. You can move from one profession to leadership in parliament for 5 years and come back to where you were and not feel any huge shockwaves or bumps because you never did anything out of the ordinary. You didn't go to an extraordinary salary. You just went to a salary that other people qualify for. And once you have served, then other people can also have a chance to serve.
And of course, when we talk about warped thinking, I think also the element of confirmation bias really comes to the fore. Because you might be really having all these good visions that you talked, and you talk about individualized consideration, you talk about inspirational motivation, you talk about those 4 elements that you alluded to before, also idealized influence as well. When we come to, maybe you have a vision and you want to really give it to, or you cast it to your the people that you're leading, but there's still that confirmation, a warped thinking, confirmation bias in their head that you cannot dispel. How will that be also sort of a tripping wire in you trying to execute or you trying to sell your vision, Dr. Wale?
You know,
because I have sacrifice. You mentioned a lot about sacrifice. You have to sacrifice something. Of course, you're sacrificing a lot to sell this particular vision. But people they're having this warped thinking, confirmation bias. How do we dispel the confirmation bias?
It's a simple thing. People will not necessarily do what you say, but they will do what they see you do. And so, if we are going to, the problem is, we have people who are saying, this is the way to do it, this is the way to do it, but then you look at their lives and you're thinking, what are the things you talked about? It's like, you know, you talked about in the Bible, King Solomon. We have a lot of King Solomons, and I'll tell you why. King Solomon said profound things, very, very profound things. He said, anybody, he talked about, you know, be careful about the strange woman and things like that. He said very profound things.
Yes.
Now, by the time this guy was dying, he had 300 wives, 700 concubines. How did he manage that? Now, so everything he said, he broke.
Yes.
That is what I call, you know, we talk about Solomonic wisdom. I call it the Solomonic syndrome, where you are saying something, but you are doing something else, and then you just cause problems. And where does this come from? Again, I believe when you look at the life of Solomon, is a very good example. A lot of when you look at Solomon, his father David was fighting a lot of battles. When Solomon came on the scene, he didn't fight any battles. Why didn't he fight battles? The people his father was fighting, he married their daughters. So you don't do war with your in-laws. Okay? Now, on the surface, it looks like Solomon was successful.
Yes.
On the surface. But was he successful at the end of the day? And that is the problem we are having. We are not having leaders who are doing. We have leaders who are saying and who are compromising, and nobody to hold them accountable. Nobody to hold them accountable, because when they come, everybody is, our man has come. Okay? Why? Because, and that's what I'm saying, somebody gives you 100 shillings, 200 shillings, and you are grateful for that 200 shillings. Okay?
Yes.
Not knowing that he's not doing you a favor, that if he did what he's supposed to do, you won't be talking of 200 shillings, you'll be talking of 200,000 shillings. You see? But like I said, if we don't know what is possible, we settle for what is available. So we see it as a favor that people are doing us. Then finally, these people, I'm very careful with the way I use the word leader. These people, if you cannot lead yourself, how can you think you will lead other people?
Yes.
If you cannot lead yourself to stand for what is right, if you cannot lead yourself to do what is right when nobody is watching, if everything is a photo op, you spend $1 million somewhere, and then you spend 5 million to publicize the fact that you have spent 1 million. Okay? That's the reality of it. Now, if you cannot lead yourself, why should you be trusted to lead other people? But I think everything boils down to personal security and insecurities. These are people, a lot of these people will steal because they do not know. They lack the thinking to be able to figure out how to succeed without having free money to steal. They lack that thinking. And then that insecurity, that the definition, my identity comes from outside. My identity comes from my car. My identity comes from what I wear. My identity comes from... You see, as long as identity comes from outside, we will keep feeding the outside at the expense of the inside. Leadership comes from inside out. because identity should come from inside. What you know, who you are, it should come from inside, flowing out. If that doesn't happen, then it comes from my car, my watch, my house, and then you begin to struggle and do whatever you can to get those things. So whenever you see things like this, people that are scrambling to take care of the outside at the expense of the inside, you are seeing people who have personal insecurities.
Personal insecurities.
So they need Mike to go and empower them.
A psychologist.
All right, Mike, dispelling the confirmation bias and just fighting the system as well, because it seems everyone who will go through this particular grid and they want maybe to become MPs, so to speak, going with the headline on the Star today, they have a fixed mentality that we cannot actually, as you're alluding to, Dr. Oliver Kisaka, come to work using a bicycle because of the perception. But how do we dispel? Do we take maybe life coaches, leadership coaches like you to talk to these people? That is not about what is on the outside, the claptrap, about life and, about power and collecting and collections of things. It's about, the innate ability as a leader that you have as a person, that inward ability that is coming from you. Are we in any way, and of course we've seen the nature of debates, the state of play that we have with the current MPs is diametrically different that we've seen over the years when it comes to nobility of character.
I think we have to look at the whole system, and what we have is a system that's in balance, like a sub-optimized equilibrium. It works between the leaders and the voters, the led, the citizens. And you've spelt it out very nicely. And we all know that we expect these handouts, we expect our leaders to be generous, and therefore they have to generate a lot of funds, and they can't do it legitimately, even whatever salaries they may get, and why they keep wanting for more. Because in this country particularly, and more so than elsewhere, the cost of politics is so high, it never stops. Campaigning is continuous. So the question is, how do you get to the root cause, which is the voter at the ballot? And we've talked on this show, and many others have talked about how do you help the voter who knows all this stuff. The voter, all the voters could talk as we're talking, but when they get to the ballot, they still vote for their man. And so who can influence them? I remember very clearly 2 or 3 elections ago, there were these professional fora that developed in the counties and constituencies to try and help citizens understand who would be the leaders that would do a better job in filling potholes rather than buying cars to drive through them. I don't know how much influence it had. In KEPSA, which I'm very involved with, this private sector umbrella body, we rack our brains all the time as to how to help bring down the cost of politics. We had this business of limiting campaign funds. It's faded out. People aren't even talking about it anymore, never mind doing anything about it or expecting that anything will be done. But until we look at this whole ecosystem that revolves around the need for so much money to drive politics and becoming an elected leader, we're not going to get the right people. And it must start with getting the right voter mindset. We are so far away from that. And my biggest concern is that when I look at countries like America, when over 60 million people can vote for Trump, or countries like Britain, where a majority can vote for Brexit, you worry for anybody, and including for here. There's this populism that's now the wave of the world. Fortunately, in this country now, in his second term, now concerned about his legacy, I think Uhuru is becoming a transformative leader. But it's hard here because you've got so many people pulling you back from your transformation. I read about Sossion every other day. For me, he's the stereotypical anti-transformative leader. Anything you want to do to take us forward? No, we're going on strike. No, that's bad. No performance appraisal. No mobility of people to reduce tribalism. No, no, no. So who can be the mediators, the influencers in favor of sobriety and that longer term that goes beyond the end of your nose.
Oliver Kisaka.
A wise man whom I cannot remember, I wish I could, this morning, said, the only job you start from the top is digging a hole. Digging a hole. That means you're actually burying yourself. I think, Debarl, our concept of success stands in the way of our ability to progress. Success for now, when a professional is thinking about going to parliament, what does he have in mind? He has in mind unlimited power, unlimited money, huge cars, huge houses. That's what he has in mind. And we'll be struggling to acquire them in 4 years. I'm a physics teacher. And we learned in physics that things like energy are neither created nor destroyed. They only change from one form to another. In chemistry, we learned that matter is not created or destroyed. In 4 years, can you buy a 50 million house, a 10 million car, in 5 years? You have got to steal for you to have that kind of access. In the process, you destroy morality, you destroy the concept of hard work. I'm not surprised that in Kenya today, average school children are now betting to try and get money. The concept of quick returns has replaced the concept of hard work and patience and character and role modeling. Things which alone can actually create satisfaction. I would wish to tell all our leaders that it's okay to be an MP for Kibera and live in Kibera. It's okay. It's okay to go to work on matatu until you can afford a car. It's okay to live within your means. It should actually become one of the ways in which we evaluate lives. How fast? That's the question that the president has now come to. How did you acquire what you acquired? The question of auditing. Because then this fellow has been on a fast acceleration lane. All the other peoples in society look at him and they just marvel at how lucky he is, and they wonder how they can get the same luck. Instead of being able to educate people by the way we live, hard work, the average primary school teacher in this country is my hero. You know, they begin in a very lowly state.
Yes.
They work little by little. They join a cooperative. They buy a small piece of land. They build a one-room house. And with time, you see them growing. You see them taking their children to school. Most successful people in Kenya actually are the children of school teachers who worked hard with great humility in their local context. And values. And are today the real role models. And so I want to plead with our leaders. I saw the other day Sarah Serem being put on the cross because she attempted to tell the MPs that if you increase your salaries beyond this level, you are killing the country. As it were, you are digging a hole in the ship in which you are sailing. They wanted to crucify her and deny her a job because of that. And I was saying, we need to tell these members of parliament, there is life after parliament. Depending on how you live in parliament, we will see you after parliament.
We'll see you after parliament.
Yes, because you can come from that status of power that you claim and materialism to a status of extreme poverty because you had no idea where money comes from, you had no idea how it's made, you saw money belonging to people, and you felt it was yours for the taking. I think we ought to do better than that.
But you're still called Mheshimiwa for life, and people expect to come to you for their 200 shillings.
Yes, that's the culture you introduced. Yeah, you taught, instead of empowering them. I mean, there are many things I disagree with Trump about, but there are a number of things I agree with him. He's working to bring out the economy so that every American has a job. Every American has a personal income. which is, I believe, the kind of thinking that ought to occupy all leaders, minus the culture.
Minus the culture.
Yeah.
Right. Could it be a case of maybe scarcity mentality? You know, when you have a scarcity mentality, and of course, we can have that particular headlining story on the Star, so that I can actually be reading for you what they really want. And they say that your favorite MP now wants to be served tea by five-star catering staff at their beck and call as they recline in their seats, supervised by a public health specialist. Also, in the evening, after a hard day's work, they will stretch out in their revamped gym to the soft and tender touches of blind masseuse. We know that was also another story about how some of them, they want blind masseuse so that they... Well, I don't want to say all these things in the morning, yeah? And also, we have, besides the five-star bus services with continental and traditional cuisines and top-of-the-range four-wheel drive cars bought by you, they also want a facelift to their glittering offices. But that will not be good enough. They want all these pleasures away from the stare of the electorate. Despite being a public facility, the MPs are lamenting over the increased number of visitors to Parliament and sharing their common areas like lifts, internet, toilets, lounges with all and sundry. These are just but some of the luxuries that your MPs are pushing for as they move further away from the voters. Scarcity mentality that maybe we... someone who, but which is good and which is okay. You have sort of a rag to riches story, a Balab to Kashmir story, but in your head, you have that scarcity mentality. Then now, once you actually exposed to all this pop and color and the traps of power, you think, this is my time to grab. This is my time now to, you know, take and can a lot.
That's
because you don't know...
entitlement mentality,
the entitlement mentality.
And this expectation of endless respect, whilst the imbalance between the extent to which you are respected and the extent to which you respect everyone else, so that you're always given a front pew at the church, you're always at the top table at any function, no matter how many hours late you are. And it's again values, it's respect. It's a sense that you're just another human being, or that you are some god, and it has to come from insecurity, like with your friend Trump.
Yes.
By the way, on that one, a lot of this business, he inherited a building economy. He didn't build it.
Okay.
And my concern with his policy of protecting American jobs and creating that is that it's not thought through. I've talked about this business of he lacks that second paragraph, quoting Thomas Friedman.
Yeah.
And you know, the downstream consequences of this, again, short-term sub-optimization can be counterproductive.
Right, right. And I think I like what you're saying, because I was listening to somebody yesterday who was actually thinking that the American situation now may actually be a bubble. So that it's been done so fast that
and
nobody knows where it's coming.
So on,
yeah. The only thing I wanted to pick from there is the Republican concept that everybody should be able to make money. One wishes that that was actually the possibility everywhere, where you empower everybody rather than impoverishing them and predisposing them to expect the 100 and the 200 shillings that you have got to offer every time an election is coming around. The concept of success is limited to a few. I greatly fear that Kenya is fast moving to the situation where the French were in 1789, is it? The circumstances that led to the French Revolution, where those in leadership are so ignorant of the pain that is in the masses, that when they are being asked, so the people have no bread, they say, please give them cakes. So
but you know, the French were among the last to adopt the Industrial Revolution, which created jobs.
Yes.
And then the workers were exploited, so we created trade unions. Your earlier comments apply to the limits of capitalism. But what we have today in the capitalist world, like here, is forever increasing inequality, disproportionate returns to capital, disproportionately fewer returns to labor, to wages, and that creates the new tensions. So with Trump, in his idea of fiscal reform, he is giving more money to the rich. and pretending to give more money to the poor, which won't actually work out, it seems.
Right. Let me just also read some of, before we come to you, Dr. Wala Kenyemi, the reactions that we have on Twitter. We have Samuel Orutwa saying that leadership must be based on natural talents. For best leaders are born leaders, terms and conditions at times deny us the best leaders and favor those with acquired papers, good in theory, without practical ability, leading the nation into failed nations. Also, we have Obunga Brian saying a transformative leader understands that the focus is on the electorate and not on themselves. Also, we do have Tilas here. True leadership is all about walking the walk. They should demonstrate integrity and honesty. Also, we have Angeline Wambua saying the true leader is one who sacrifices for his people. Edwin Osiel saying, but in Kenya we have transactional leadership rather than transformational leadership. And of course, we should talk about that transactional. What we're experiencing, is it transactional or transformational leadership as well? We have Jeremiah Kariuki saying Kenya is a nation of populism, fashion and role model coping. We only need a few leaders to start cycling to office, start singing real tunes of good morality and living within their means. The rest will start coping if they see it fashionable. Also, we have Joe Bombati saying, I urge Kenyans not to forget we need justice done to our economy, not the chosen few corrupt, greedy benefactors. And we have also Abdallah Madambo saying, we often confuse power with leadership. People with power often manage decline. Leadership disrupts the status quo. It doesn't manage it. What do we expect from those in power? Are we experiencing transactional leadership or transformational leadership, Dr. Wale?
Okay, to answer that, let me tell you a story. We just came out of the World Cup, and you had a very interesting scenario. You had a group of some African nations, okay? So you had the Africans playing for the African nations, and they did not make it past the group stage. Then you had a French team with a majority number of Africans who now went to win the World Cup. So my question is, how come Africans playing for Africa could not perform, but Africans playing for France could perform? A lot of reasons. The environment, the leadership, and so on and so forth. But then there's another thing. You have the African athlete, I know some of those, playing for Nigeria, for instance, say, I'm not going unless I am paid X amount in advance, okay? And then you have Mbappe, whose father said, I wanted him to play for Cameroon, but they wanted me to give money. And the French said, come. Then the money he's supposed to make, he's donating it. So it was never about the money. It was about honor. So where does patriotism and honor come from? Okay? Now, when we ask that question, where does patriotism come from? Is patriotism transactional? Is patriotism, I am patriotic because you have done this for me? Okay? That's the question. Now, when I look at myself, I am Yoruba, and but when I ask myself sincerely, what has, as the Yoruba nation, what has it done for me as an individual? And this is a question I ask across Africa, because Africa is tribal. Ask yourself, the things that you are saying you need to see before you can be patriotic, has your tribe done it for you? The answer is no. So why then do we still stay patriotic to a tribe that has done nothing for us? Why is it that when an election comes, I will vote for a Yoruba dodo instead of voting for a Hausa genius? Why? It's because And this patriotism, my tribe gave me an identity. So what I am voting for is not what they have done for me, but I am voting for my own identity. Now, why is that important in this conversation we are having? Remember, I said, at the root of this problem, why is it transactional? At the root of this problem is that when you have people who have a low self-esteem in positions of authority, they will do everything because they think their identity comes from the car. It is what makes them feel good. So if you are telling them, don't steal, don't do this, that's why you thought I was joking. I said people here should be engaged to teach these guys about identity that comes from within, not from without.
Right.
I wanted to comment
briefly,
on this.
As we're winding up also as well, to prepare our headline thoughts. Sorry.
Okay, so
Yeah.
this transactional transformative.
Yes.
Politicians everywhere tend to be transactional around the electoral cycle. And that is a challenge everywhere, including here. Now people have to be transactional around the first 100 days, that I will promise you instant miracles the moment I step into office, which then doesn't turn out, of course. But the biggest challenges of transformation go beyond the electoral cycle. The Vision 2030 that no one talks about for that reason, the demographic dividend, climate change, the environment, family planning, all of that is transformational and is too hard for politicians because they are transactional because of the competitive politics. Dictators have a much easier time in China and elsewhere.
Right. Even as we're winding up, briefly, we just have this particular clip. We'll just play it briefly from a conversation that we had between governors here. And when we're talking about transactional leadership, where also the rule of law really comes to the fore, and we have leaders who are caught up, in between a hard place and a rock as far as the law is concerned. How do they react? Let's just listen in briefly.
Anatoka, ashatoka. Si mimi mwenyewe nimeongea na mama. Nimekwambia tumeongea. Sahi umeongea na? Nimeongea na mama. Yes. Mara ya pili? Ile mara ya kwanza nimeongea na yeye. No, ile ya pili sasa. Mimi nakwambia amechukuliwa tena na basement. Hawezi, that is wrong. That is wrong. They cannot do this to a wife. No. Wewe unakuta vile tumezunguka Nairobi na wewe. Sawa my brother. Na bado tunaenda mbali. Wewe ukumbuke bahali tumetoka wewe. Namwachilia, mama namwachilia. Bahali tumetoka na bado tuko. First lady wako ni sawa na first lady wangu. Heshima kwanza. Bahali ujue bahali tumetoka na bado tunaenda bado tuko. Namwachilia sahi na pia upige huko juu, lakini mama mimi naachilia. Mimi navunja sheria na naachilia mama sahi. Ukuja nikupea approval. Ukiwa free. Lakini sasa waachilia watu bwana. Haya wacha nijaribu. Waachilia watu wote bwana. Wewe sisi bado fika wakusubuana na wewe. Sawa.
Right. What really surprises me is that, I'll break the law, for the benefit, a preferential treatment for the other leader as well. So we have the law here which can actually be used like a wax knox. You twist it, to your own benefit, to your own favor. Yeah. Tomorrow you'll twist it on the left, tomorrow you'll twist it on the right.
He actually said,
as a winding up,
for the sake of your first lady, I will break the law.
Yes.
He said it in public.
Yes.
I think the great betrayal that the citizens of any country or the followers of any leader can face is to actually see that the leader, as I think Dr. Wali has said this morning, that the leader breaks the rules that he has set. What's the purpose of being the champion of breaking everybody's buildings if when it comes to the buildings of your friend, you can actually speak like that? It's defeatist. I think the president has, for the first time in the history of Kenya, shown some fairly decisive leadership. When he said, I think it was last Sunday, I have lost many friends, but I think we must stand for what is right. Good leadership, that's the sacrifice you're talking about. Good leadership has got to be willing to pay the price to put things straight. If you set the rules and enforce them, people will turn around and abide by the rules.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Oliver Kisaka. Let's hear also your parting shots, Mike Eldon.
I was wondering why Sonko recorded it and why he released the recording. I have no answer to that, by the way. I don't know if anyone has. But he was so relaxed about revealing all that you are saying. And that, to me, is the biggest mystery of all. But anyway, it's beyond comment. I don't think we should end too much on that note. I think we should end on the note that we do have uplifting, transformative leaders in this country, including some of our politicians, including many of our civil servants. Some of our governors are really keen to make a difference, not only with counties and county clusters.
Thank you.
And there is hope.
Thank you.
The challenge is to spread the positive role models.
There is hope. Right, let's hear from Dr. Wale Akinyemi, finally.
The office does not make the person. The person makes the office. The importance and glamour of an office will rise or fall based on the capacity and integrity of the person at the helm of that office.
Right. Thank you. Dr. Wale Akinyemi, I really do appreciate you coming through. The CEO of Power Talks, Mike Eldon, CEO and the founder of the depot and also the chair of KCA University. Thank you for coming through. And Dr. Oliver Kisaka, Managing Director, Korat Africa, thank you for coming through as well. And we really do appreciate all your insight this morning. And Michael George is saying, let me just begin with Nathaniel Arab Chumo is saying, transformational leader improves the quality of development by building selfless community leadership to sustain initiated changes. That is what Nathaniel Arab Chumo is saying there. And also Samuel Orutwa is saying leadership must be based on, I think I read this, Michael George, sorry for them. My take is that I think it's high time for the media houses to seek for security help from police to accompanying the reporters, field journalists, that they're going to cover a very sensitive story. This is just in light of the top stories that we had for you this morning about journalists as well. But I do appreciate your valid company this morning, right? Let's do this next week as well. And Living with Us is up next. Don't go away.